So this TV area is a bit of a mess, and in this video, we're gonna try to make it a little less messy. Hi everyone, welcome to another Tech Talk with Samir, where I talk about anything and everything related to technology in my life. So this TV here is probably the most used TV in the house. It's not because it's the best TV we have, it's not even the biggest TV we have, and it doesn't even have a sound bar, so all we're really using is the TV audio, so it's not exactly the best experience. But because of where it's located, it's basically on all the time for things like news, sports, and just passive watching, because it's easily viewable from the kitchen, from the breakfast area, so it's on all the time. But it's also the messiest TV setup we have in the house. This glass TV stand we have, I absolutely hate it. There's nothing in the back to hide the cables in the back, and it just doesn't go with the rest of the furniture in this room. And the only reason this thing is still here is because this TV sits on this stand. And it was one of the few TV stands we could find back in the day that was affordable and could fit a TV of this size, mainly because of these dual stand system that this TV has. Now ideally, we would have liked to mount this TV to the wall to get rid of the dependence of the TV stand. Now the issue with this space is that there's a bit of an indent here. So if we were to mount it to the wall over there, a big chunk of the room would not be able to see the TV. Now last week when I was browsing around on Amazon Prime Day, I came across this, okay, move. Cats are so nosy. So I came across this long arm TV wall mount. So what this does is basically extends the TV from the wall about 43 inches for this particular one so that it doesn't have to be flush to the wall. So today in this video, I'm going to try to take this and put that TV on the wall. The first step is to clear everything off and move things out of the way. Depending on what you have in your space, it might be a good idea to have someone help you while moving the heavier items. For me, that someone was my cat, but he wasn't very helpful. Cats know what you're doing and just always wants to get in the way. Once I had the space cleared out, the first thing I did was actually install the mounting brackets on the TV. I actually kept the TV legs still on while I did this, that way I didn't have to put the TV face down on the ground. But for some TVs that might not be an option since it might get in the way of the brackets. Also, it's not recommended that you use a drill to tighten the screws, but I was too lazy to do it by hand. I did have the drill set to the lowest torque settings though. Right around this moment, my feline assistant thought we were playing games and decided to play footsies with me from other side of the TV. I just about had enough, so I decided to fire him at this moment. Let me know in the comments if you think whether firing him was justified. After I had the brackets attached, I took some measurements from the top of the TV to the part where the TV will be hanging from. This will give me a rough idea of where on the wall to attach the mounting hardware based on my desired height for the TV. I then brought out the stud finder to locate where the studs are behind the drywall. I like to use painter's tape to mark the studs instead of a pencil, so that I can just peel them off afterwards. That way I don't have any permanent marks on the wall. I also have trust issues with stud finders, so what I do is mark multiple spots at different heights for the same stud and try to make an informed guess on where the stud actually is before I start drilling. The last thing I want to do is make a hole and realize that I didn't even hit a stud. I then had to figure out exactly where to drill based on the measurements I took earlier to ensure I get the desired height for the TV. Even though I was measuring, it eventually came down to just eyeballing it, so you don't have to be very precise. Now, when it came to precisely marking where to drill, the mounting hardware came with a paper template that you can tape to the wall to overlay the layout of the holes. This way you don't have to hold the heavy mounting gear up while also trying to operate a drill. I also used a laser level to make sure things were leveled before drilling. I highly recommend using a laser level instead of a traditional bubble type of level for this type of work. Just makes things a lot easier without having to recheck after every adjustment. And it is very important to make sure that the mount is leveled correctly. The last thing you want is a TV that is tilted on the wall. It was now time to actually drill. The manual for my mounting gear told me exactly what size drill bit to use, so I didn't have to guess. By the way, I'll be putting Amazon affiliate links for the mounting gear and other accessories that I'm using in the description of this video. Now, one thing with this particular mounting hardware is that it can only be mounted on walls where the studs are 16 inches apart or less. If you're looking to get this one, make sure to check your studs before ordering. Also, while drilling, I use the vertical line from the laser level to use as a vertical guide to make sure I drill into the stud both on the top and the bottom. This of course assumes that the home builders did their job in making sure that the studs are completely vertical. I then went on to screw on the mount to the wall with the included 4 lag screws. These are some heavy duty screws, and it makes sense why, because these are ultimately what's keeping your TV anchored to the wall. This step was actually quite challenging to do on my own because I had to hold the mounting gear in one hand while trying to secure the screw with the other hand. Ideally, you want someone to help you with this, but as I mentioned earlier, I fired my assistant. I did use an impact driver to help me get the screws in place, otherwise it would have been impossible for me to do it on my own. I did go back with the socket wrench to do the final tightening to make sure it's fully secured to the wall. Now this area did have a power outlet behind where I wanted the TV, so I didn't need to add one like I've done in the past. However, I did still need a way to get HDMI cables from the TV to the bottom to connect to my devices. And as I've mentioned in my past TV mounting videos, the key is to hide any cables behind the wall. And to do that, I needed to cut out holes on the drywall on the top and the bottom to pass the cables through. To make the holes a little less of an eyesore, I got these wall plate mounting brackets. That's so that in the future, if I don't need the holes anymore, I can just use blank plates to cover them up. To actually cut the drywall, in the past I've used a drywall saw, but that was a pain to use. So this time around, I'm just using an oscillating multi-tool to cut the drywall. It worked out beautifully with minimal effort. I did have to make 2 holes, one on the top behind the TV and the other at the bottom behind where my devices are supposed to be. The key is to make sure that both of the holes are vertically aligned so that when you pass the cable from the top, you can easily pull it out at the bottom. Before I put on the plate bracket on the bottom hole, I ran 2 HDMI cables through the holes so that it's easier to fetch the cables. Just a spoiler, I didn't actually end up using either of these HDMI cables, so technically I didn't actually need to pass these cables down. This was a good time for me to remove all the painter's tape from the wall since I no longer needed to know where the studs were. Now it's time to attach the front mounting plate to the rest of the bracket. The instructions did say to do this as an earlier step, but I think I made a better decision by doing it later in the process. The bracket was already heavy enough for me to hold up when I was putting in the lag screws. This would have just made it heavier during that process. This was attached with 4 screws. It came with a little tool that helps you tighten the screws. Also, it turns out that there is a little bit of a wiggle room in terms of straightening your TV with these screws, but it's still best to make sure that the bracket is level on the wall first. This front mounting plate is actually where the TV will hang from, so when it comes to making sure your TV is straight, this is the most important thing to get leveled correctly. Now the moment of truth. It's time to hang the TV. Once again, this step would have been much easier with an assistant, but mine was useless, so I had to do it myself. To be honest, I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to do it. I mean, picking up a 65-inch TV and putting it on a mount without seeing what's happening in the back, not an easy task. After hanging the TV, I had to tighten 2 screws in the back to secure the TV into place. I used an Allen key that came in the box to tighten them. It was finally time to remove the annoying TV legs. These legs are the sole reason why I was limited with which TV stands I could use, so this was definitely a milestone moment. With the TV in place, it was time to connect all the cabling. This was the moment that I realized that I didn't actually need the 2 HDMI cables that I ran behind the wall. That's because all the devices that I plan on connecting are small enough that I can just attach them to the back of the TV with Velcro. But even then, having the ability to run HDMI cables to the bottom does give me flexibility in the future in case I want to connect a large cable box or a gaming console. But I did need to run an Ethernet cable to accommodate for the P-way HDMI over IP device I used to view my security cameras. So I used a fishing tape to pull the cable up behind the wall. By the way, if you haven't already, please check out the review I did for the P-way HDMI over IP device. This thing is a game changer for broadcasting HDMI signal over your network to different TVs. Like I mentioned earlier, I went ahead and attached my devices to the back of the TV with Velcro. Now, one thing to keep in mind if you're planning on doing this is to make sure that your remote still works if your devices are behind your TV. Some devices are sensitive to having a direct line of sight from the remote in order to work. It was time to tidy up a bit with some cable management. Now, I didn't go too crazy with cable management because my main thing is not to necessarily have the cleanest cabling, but just managed in a way such that you can't see the mess from the front. So I just used some cable management ties that came in the box to hide the cables. I did a final check to see if the TV is leveled correctly. This time around, I did bring out a traditional level because I couldn't see the laser on the TV screen, and it passed the test. As you can imagine, the TV accumulated a lot of fingerprints during this entire process, and a couple of paw prints too. So before turning on the TV, I just went at it with a microfiber cloth to clean it all off. And it was finally time to turn on the TV to make sure everything works. And of course everything worked. And there you have it, guys. This TV is now finally mounted after years of contemplating on whether I should mount it or not. Now, the job isn't completely done because I do have to figure out what I want to do in this space underneath. I'll probably build something that's custom sized to fit here so that I can hide all the cabling and the mess in the background. But at least I can get rid of that glass TV stand that I hated for years. Now, inevitably, I'm probably going to get comments asking, why did I mount this TV so high up? Isn't it going to be uncomfortable to watch? And that is a valid point. In fact, a lot of people pointed that out when I mounted my OLED TV upstairs. And to my credit, I did fix it afterwards. Now this one is actually intentionally placed higher up than what you would normally want. And that's because, like I said earlier, this TV is mostly watched in a passive manner from the kitchen or from the breakfast table. It's rare that we're sitting on the couch to watch this TV. So because we're watching it from the distance, it's better to be higher up so we have a better view. Anyway, stay tuned for a future video where I take care of the bottom part of this area and see what I come up with to transform this area further. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that video. And also don't forget to hit the thumbs up button because it really helps with the YouTube algorithm. As always, stay safe and I'll see you again on the next one.